All right, mercantilism is another economic system that we're going to look at as our exploration of the European world continues. And this is a little bit different than capitalism, but has some capitalist components built into it. All right, let's start off with a definition. What is mercantilism? It's the theory that a country's power depended mainly on its wealth to build strong navies and purchase vital trade goods. Okay, so we've got gold, we've got some ships, and we've got some trade routes. These are the basis of the mercantilist system. Now, there are two ways that you can increase a nation's wealth. First, you want to obtain as much gold and silver as possible. And we saw this when we looked at the conquistadors when they conquered the Aztec and Inca civilizations. Their primary motive was to get gold and silver to help make their country more wealthy and powerful, as well as themselves, too. In addition, you want to establish a favorable balance of trade in which a country is going to sell more goods than it bought. So you need to sell more things than you buy, or otherwise you'll have an unbalanced system of trade. If you buy too much and then you don't have any money left to pay for those goods, you become in debt. So that balance of trade needs to be in your favor. Sell more goods than you bring in. Okay, so here's how mercantilism works. I'm going to explain this for you. Colonies existed for the benefit of the mother country. So in this case, we'll say England and Europe is the mother country, and it's going to colonize North America. Okay? Now, what's in North America? Well, that's the source of raw materials. Raw materials are essentially cheap, inexpensive. Okay, so they're easy to find. Might be trees. We'll use trees as an example, actually. Let's say trees, wood. There's not a lot of wood left in Europe at this point. They've cut down all their trees, so they go to North America. There are trees everywhere, so they start to cut down trees and ship them back to Europe. Pretty cheap, pretty inexpensive. Now, they ship those back to the mother country to be turned into finished goods. So I take my trees, my wood, that I've shipped over from North America to Europe, in this case we'll say England, and in England I'm going to turn it into a finished good, like a chair or a table. All right, so that's a finished good. It's something that has to be manufactured. Now, that finished good is then shipped back to the North American colony. All right, and in the colony, the finished goods, which are shipped back, are expensive. So when it came over as a raw material, it was cheap. But now that it's gone back over as a finished good, like a table or a chair, it's going to be expensive. So the difference in this case is what we call profit. So if I send $5 worth of wood to Europe, they turn that into chairs, and then they sell the chairs for $15. All right, that's $10 of profit. Maybe if you cut out $5 for shipping costs back and forth, you've got $5 of profit for the chair. That's important that you understand that that profit goes to the mother country, in this case England. The profit does not go to the colony. The colony is to be exploited for cheap raw materials so that the mother country can make a profit off of the finished goods. The mother country then does unusual things like pass laws that make it illegal for people to make chairs and tables in North America, forcing the colonists to have to buy their tables and chairs from the mother country. Okay, so you pass the laws, you forbid the colonies from producing their own goods. That, of course, is going to create resentment among people in North America. After a while, after 2 or 3 generations, they're going to get upset. You know, they're not making any profit. They have to pay a lot of money for things that they can't actually produce in their own colony because they have to buy it from the mother country. This is essentially what we see as an unfair system. Okay, so mercantilism results in unfair or unbalanced trade. Profit goes to the mother country at the expense of the colony. It works initially, it makes the mother country really strong, but in the end, the colonists will get upset. They'll make declarations that it's unfair, it's not a good system, taxation without representation, and they eventually will rebel against the mother country. So if you understand American history, you know that's essentially what took place. It took several generations for that to occur, but people were really rebelling against the unfair nature of mercantilism. And in fact, that's why capitalism came along. The people said that capitalism was a better system than mercantilism because it gave people in the colonies a chance to be able to make profit as well. Okay, so a little bit more fair. Competitive, but fairer than mercantilism. Okay, here's another system of trade that you need to understand as part of this process of mercantilism, and it's known as triangular trade. So let's take a look at what's going on this map below. Okay, and what we'll see is that Europeans transported manufactured goods to the west coast of Africa. So again, Great Britain is manufacturing goods, maybe tables, chairs, clothes, guns, and perhaps, and they're shipping them to the western part of Africa near the Congo. Okay, and then what they do is the traders exchange these goods for captured Africans who were then sold in the Americas. So they would trade the goods for captured Africans who were then turned into slaves, and those slaves and gold, if they paid gold for those manufactured goods, would then be shipped to either South America, the Caribbean region, or even into North America itself. And then the merchants that bought that sugar, coffee, and tobacco in the West Indies would then sail back to Europe to sell these products. So you can see that what North American colonies are making is rum, cotton, tobacco, sugar, molasses, cotton. Those are raw materials, which are sent back to the mother company as cheap raw materials that then pay for the shipment of manufactured goods down to West Africa. And so if I look at this complicated system of triangular trade, you'll see it's just not that simple. Trade's not a two-way street. All right, so raw materials to the mother countries make manufactured goods, which goes down to Africa, are traded for slaves. The slaves are brought to America and paid for with the raw materials, which are then sent back to Britain. And this cycle continues and repeats itself over time. And eventually this creates the process of the slave trade, which becomes sort of a long-term economic incentive for people in Europe to continue colonization and the slavery of human people, and particularly in Africa. So it becomes part of the economic system, and later on we'll see it will be a little bit difficult to undo this process once it gets started. All right, so what are the long-term results? All right, global trade routes shifted over time. All right, we know that they started in Asia, in the Old World. We also know that the old Silk routes declined, that the Silk Road began to decline and people weren't trading in West Asia as they once were. West Asia and the Islamic world were displaced as the centralized location of global trade. Then the Atlantic and the Pacific Sea routes became the new focus of global trade. So you can see by looking at these two maps, all right, the old trade routes of Asia were across land and across some sea routes, but the new routes of trade are actually in the Atlantic Ocean. It's a complete shift away from Asia and West Asia, the Middle East, to sort of the Atlantic region, the coasts of Europe, Africa, South America, and North America. This is one of the things that's really left behind the Old World, and particularly the Middle East. The Middle East had its golden age of Islam in the 1500s. It was pretty much in decline, but between the 1200s and the 1500s is when they were at their golden age. But once Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 and these trade routes shifted, it sort of marked the beginning of the decline of the Islamic golden age because a trade route shifted. Nobody had to go through the Middle Eastern middleman anymore. They could now just get on boats and go around them. And in fact, part of the reasons that we have some Islamic resentment towards the West today is the fact that they were left behind back in the 1500s in terms of global trade. And not until the emergence of oil as a major resource have they begun to gain power again. And of course, that's in the 20th century.